Hola Cristian, ¿cómo estás? Buenos días a todas y todos.
Buenos días, Henry. Estamos comenzando el webinario, estamos esperando que la gente se conecte, así que si quieres podemos aprovechar estos minutos para que puedas probar tu presentación.
Ah, sí.
Vamos a partir en un minuto más, estamos haciendo la última prueba técnica y partimos con el seminario. Así que adelante, Henry, puedes probar sin problemas. Luego de esta pequeña prueba técnica, quiero tomarme unos minutos para agradecer a cada uno y cada una de los asistentes que nos están acompañando el día de hoy a partir de esta transmisión de Zoom. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a nombre de la Oficina Regional de Educación para América Latina y el Caribe de la UNESCO en Santiago de Chile, a la primera sesión de la serie de webinarios sobre educación para el desarrollo sostenible y restauración de manglares como solución basada en la naturaleza en reservas de la biosfera de América Latina. Esta serie de webinarios va a tener 3 sesiones. La del día de hoy, ¿cierto? Es sobre educación para el desarrollo sostenible y el rol ecosistémico de los manglares, ¿no? Y tiene como objetivo principalmente que podamos comprender todos y todas aquel rol ecosistémico que tienen los ecosistemas de manglar en el escenario de la crisis climática, las diferentes oportunidades que pueden brindar como un laboratorio vivo para la educación para el desarrollo sostenible. Entonces, para partir, quiero darle la palabra a mi querida colega María Rosa Cárdenas, de la Secretaría Ejecutiva del Programa de Reservas de la Biosfera Hombre y Reservas de la Biosfera. Así que adelante, María Rosa. Muchas gracias por...
Muchas gracias, Cristian. Un gusto estar acá. Buenos días a todas y a todos. En el nombre de la UNESCO y de su programa sobre el hombre y la biosfera, también quiero darle las bienvenidas y celebrar junto a ustedes este Día Internacional del Ecosistema de Manglares. Un día sumamente importante para nosotros, puesto que hacemos una llamada a proteger estos ecosistemas que son extraordinarios, puesto que viven en el límite entre la tierra y el mar. Son unos ecosistemas, además, que contribuyen al bienestar, a la seguridad alimentaria y a la protección de las comunidades de más de 100 países del mundo. Como ha dicho Cristian, la importancia también del ecosistema de manglar es en la actualidad aún más importante, puesto que nos enfrentamos a esta crisis climática y los ecosistemas de manglares son un importante sumidero de carbono. Sin embargo, y lamentablemente los ecosistemas de manglares están desapareciendo entre 3 y 5 veces más rápido que las pérdidas globales de bosque, y se ha estimado que alrededor de un 50% de los manglares han desaparecido en los últimos 40 años, lo que genera, por supuesto, graves repercusiones ecológicas y socioeconómicas. Y es por esto que la UNESCO, junto y gracias también al apoyo del gobierno de Flandes, del Reino de Bélgica, además del apoyo del Organismo Autónomo de Parques Nacionales de España, es que estamos implementando en la actualidad un proyecto de restauración de manglares, el proyecto Mangres, que lo estamos ejecutando en 7 países de América Latina: Colombia, Cuba, Ecuador, El Salvador, México, Panamá y Perú. 7 de estos países con 7 reservas de biosfera están participando en la actualidad en este proyecto, cuyo objetivo es poder primero hacer una evaluación del ecosistema de manglar, analizar su potencial de restauración, poder emprender también campañas de restauración utilizando el conocimiento indígena local, pero también el conocimiento científico, y a la vez que vamos promoviendo la educación, las actividades económicas sostenibles y la cooperación científica internacional. Este proyecto no solamente va a proporcionar oportunidades económicas sostenibles, pero también un tema muy importante para nosotros, este diálogo entre diferentes portadores de saberes y conocimientos que van a poder ayudar a mejorar la gestión de reservas de biosfera. Y acá la parte importante que nos reúne hoy día es que más allá de la protección y de la restauración, también necesitamos una gran toma de conciencia que sea no solamente a escala local, pero también a escala global de lo que implica tener conocimiento de este ecosistema de manglar. Y por lo mismo necesitamos educar, sensibilizar no solamente en los centros de educación, no solamente en escuelas, pero en todos los lugares que sea posible. Y creo que gracias a esta serie de webinarios es el propósito que podamos lograr de llegar a muchos lugares del mundo y poder hacer entonces una llamada a esta protección y conservación del manglar. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, María Rosa, por esa intervención. Como ya lo mencionado, para nosotros desde UNESCO es muy importante, ¿cierto?, construir este cambio de mentalidades que nos permita aumentar la conservación y concientización sobre el rol que tiene el ecosistema de manglares. Ahora, para seguir con los saludos iniciales, quisiera invitar a nuestra colega Juana Jiménez del Instituto Marino, ¿cierto?, de Flandes, oficial de Enlace Internacional. Querida Juana, adelante, por favor.
Muchas gracias, Cristian, y muchas gracias a todos por acompañarnos en este webinar celebrando el Día Mundial de los Manglares. Yo trabajo para la Oficina de Relaciones Internacionales. Estoy aquí en representación de la directora Anne-Catherine, que lamentablemente no pudo estar, ya que está cumpliendo con otras reuniones a la vez. Pero quería manifestarles desde nuestro instituto, que es el BLIS con las signas, con las iniciales, de nuestro compromiso y el entusiasmo que tenemos de promover la educación y estos intercambios de conocimiento que no solamente pueden darse a nivel local, sino nacional, regional e internacional, sobre todo para el apoyo al desarrollo sostenible. Estando en la década de las ciencias oceánicas para el desarrollo sostenible y la década para la restauración de los ecosistemas, vemos que es el marco perfecto para cooperar, sumar alianzas, colaboraciones y enfatizar esta misión que todos tenemos de ayudar a ecosistemas tan importantes como los manglares, así como lo manifestó María Rosa. Y un ejemplo de esta colaboración en el campo es lo que se está dando con el proyecto MANRES. Vamos a buscar esta colaboración entrando no solamente con los expertos, sino también con comunidades, con institutos, con las reservas de biosferas, con los gestores en interno. Y vamos a lo que es compartir esta información, ya que ahora estamos entrando con toda esta serie que nos ayuda a acercarnos y mantenernos en contacto, estemos donde estemos como son estos webinarios, y facilitar el acceso a infraestructura y promover la interoperabilidad de los datos que podamos generar, ya que no solamente van a servir para la ciencia, sino también para los gestores de las reservas, las comunidades y para la sociedad en conjunto, que es tan importante involucrarlos. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Juana. Qué gusto contar también con su apoyo y colaboración para lograr esta tan importante tarea, ¿no? Antes de dar inicio al panel, quisiera hacer algunas indicaciones generales. La primera es que van a poder encontrar en la barra inferior de su pantalla la caja de preguntas y respuestas. Así que si tienen alguna pregunta a nuestros panelistas, pueden dejarla ahí y luego de la intervención de cada uno y cada una, vamos a dar un pequeño espacio para responder a aquellas preguntas. Así que eso es lo primero. Lo segundo es que van a poder también encontrar abajo, ¿cierto? Contamos hoy con interpretación en español y en inglés, así que si aprietan el logo de interpretación, van a poder también acceder a la interpretación correspondiente. Dicho eso, entonces quisiera también tomarme unos minutos para comentarles por qué es importante para nosotros, desde el programa de educación de la UNESCO, trabajar en esta temática. Como ya lo ha mencionado tanto mi colega María Rosa como Juana, ¿cierto? Los manglares son un ecosistema excepcional que está en un constante riesgo. Desde el punto de vista de la educación, nosotros creemos, ¿cierto?, que es clave poder hacer ese cambio de mentalidades y comportamientos que nos permita, a partir de lo que nosotros llamamos educación para el desarrollo sostenible, construir nuevas mentalidades y nuevas maneras de relacionarnos con nuestro medio ambiente y nuestro entorno para poder lograr una relación armoniosa y no poner en riesgo, ¿cierto?, tanto las posibilidades que tienen las generaciones actuales como las generaciones futuras, ¿cierto?, de poder convivir y disfrutar con los diferentes ecosistemas que tenemos en nuestro planeta. Desde ese punto de vista, la educación es clave porque permite sensibilizar, pero al mismo tiempo también permite entregar información constantemente de diferentes modalidades, ¿cierto?, para poder poner en valor a los manglares y sus diferentes roles también y recuperar esos medios de vida tradicionales que tienen estos ecosistemas en los diferentes lugares en donde se encuentran ubicados. El panel de hoy día, para dar comienzo ya a la sesión, ¿cierto?, va a contar con la señora Paula Sierra, ¿cierto?, que es una persona experta de INVEMAR o OTGAR, que es la Ocean Teacher Global Academy, que es un instituto también que trabaja sobre ciencias oceánicas y educación. Vamos a contar también con Henry Preciado, ¿cierto?, que es el gestor de una reserva en Perú también de ecosistemas de manglares, ¿cierto?, Amotapes Manglares. Y vamos a contar también con nuestra colega, ¿cierto?, Xiomara Enríquez, que nos va a presentar también sobre la reserva que se encuentra en El Salvador y que está participando también de este proyecto. Así que para empezar, le voy a dar la palabra a Paula Sierra, por favor, para que nos pueda compartir su presentación. Muchísimas gracias, Paula, por acompañarnos el día de hoy.
Claro que sí, muchas gracias a ustedes desde UNESCO, tanto Oficina Central en París como en Chile, por organizar este webinar que es súper importante en este día para todos. Un muy feliz día del manglar. Y estoy acá intentando compartir mi pantalla. Me avisan, por favor, cuando puedan verla.
Listo, Paula, la vemos perfectamente.
Perfecto. Entonces, bueno, como les decía, un feliz día para todos. Este es un día que se ha declarado internacionalmente y en muchos de nuestros países también ha sido asumido. Y creemos que dentro del contexto de lo que nos cuenta Cristian sobre el rol de los manglares frente al escenario de crisis climática, hay un montón de oportunidades como laboratorio para educación para el desarrollo sostenible. Como ya me presentaron, yo soy Paula Cristina Sierra Correa. Mi cargo en el INVEMAR es coordinadora de investigación e información y soy también la coordinadora del Centro Regional de Entrenamiento para Latinoamérica de la Ocean Teacher Global Academy. Actualmente como copresidenta para el periodo 2023-2025 de la IOD-IOC UNESCO. Entonces, entrando acá en materia, contarles a manera de introducción, pues que los cambios son un atributo natural en los humedales marinos y costeros como son los manglares y que les permiten responder y adaptarse a la variabilidad climática y a los impactos humanos. Eso es muy importante porque de por sí están sometidos permanentemente a cambios. ¿Qué es lo que pasa? Que ya hay evidencias globales acerca de los cambios acelerados y de sus impactos. Y entre esas evidencias, pues tenemos el incremento de temperatura, tenemos el incremento en el nivel del mar, el incremento en el pH del océano. Pero también hay estresores no climáticos que están influenciando a esos humedales marinos y a los sistemas socioeconómicos que dependen de ellos, lo que adiciona retos para la planeación de las actividades que tienen que ver con estos ecosistemas, no solamente de la conservación per se, sino del uso que se da alrededor de los mismos. Y los manglares son unos de esos sistemas altamente vulnerables a impactos antropogénicos, a todas esas actividades que se hacen desde tierra y que llegan a la costa. Pero también son altamente resilientes. Y de ahí que sea muy crucial conservarlos, dada la regulación que pueden prestar, sobre todo desde sus servicios. Aquí mostrarles básicamente que cuando hablamos de reservas de biosfera estamos hablando también en general de áreas marinas protegidas y entonces pues traigo a colación este afiche que pone la IUCN sobre cómo se ha ido incrementando la resiliencia ante los impactos de cambio climático. ¿Y qué es lo que pasa? Que normalmente lo que tenemos es unas emisiones de carbono a la atmósfera muy importantes que no han parado, que
to
a
the
través de la
atmosphere that are very relevant if they have not stopped. Many countries have agreed upon at the convention to reduce these levels, but we have not achieved this. We are still under industrialization area, and we are depending on all these energies that have to do with this process being stronger every time. But we also have a huge capacity for absorbing CO2 at the ecosystems, in particular in marine and shorelands ecosystems, among those mangroves. We're having a heating 0.8 centigrade degrees. We have the acidification of the ocean, and we see the problems that all shells have had with this increase. And of course, extreme climatic events. We're all seeing the heat waves and the heavy rainfall and the increase, of course, of the sea level that causes erosion to mangrove systems. These protective marine areas are impacted, and we are to protect the habitats. They protect our habitats and the communities living at the shoreland, and with control management of these systems, it will allow for these services to continue to be functional. There is a theory of anti-services with mangroves because they've been chopped down. we see the chart as from 1883, what happened with these ecosystems in the last 100 years or more. We have had loss after loss of these ecosystems because we thought that the mangroves ecosystems were the source of mosquitoes and then a source of diseases. So it was important to eliminate them, but also because they were areas that could be filled in and become areas where you could inhabit as a human being. And this species controls the habitat because it wants more land to live. So to this climate crisis, we are adding the use and abuse by humans in an indiscriminate manner. We see mangroves in these tropical and subtropical areas, these green lines that we see here. The greatest percentage is between the 10 degrees north and south in latitude, and South America is the second greatest extension of mangroves with 15.7 after the southeast of Asia with 33.5%. The mangroves, as we see, are submitted to these impacts that I mentioned, and here we can see in red those that are most vulnerable, and the ones that are least vulnerable shown in green. So if we see this whole area of the north of Australia, this big area, these islands, they are highly vulnerable. And in Africa, as we see here, of course, in the Caribbean. This potential for ecosystem services is related, and we see in the charts. Please take a look at the yellow age. There we have the potential of ecosystems. Here we have inland wetlands, coastal and marine wetlands, and human-made wetlands. And if we see here everything related to manglers, the main services, not only provisioning services, but also from the point of view of climate regulation services are essential. They regulate the climate. Around the climate, they regulate the climatic variable, hydrological systems, they help to control pollution, they are the receptors of everything that happens in land, they protect the shoreline and protect from erosion, and they capture or sequestrate carbon. So this is to better understand how the carbon sequestration happens. Properly preserved mangrove systems are those that have the lowest greenhouse effect emissions. And degraded manglers are issuing these greenhouse effects. So it's very important to restore mangroves in both protected and unprotected areas. And as we have seen in many parts of the world, after big events like tsunamis or floods, after these mangroves were eliminated, we start having erosion and floods and loss of human life and infrastructure. In the case of our biosphere reserve, we've been impacted twice recently by hurricanes, Eta and Iota hurricanes in 2020 and 2023, Julia hurricane, and in both cases, the mangroves protected the shoreline, and it was very important. The potential for capturing and retaining organic carbon for the long term. Here we see the grasslands, the marshlands, the estuary mangroves, and we see their potential vis-a-vis rainforests. Here we see the emissions produced for around 214 passengers vehicles per year, and these manglers occupy only 0.7% of the land coverage, and they are sequestrating 1 to 2% of the world emissions of CO2. there is a huge potential, but we need the services from these ecosystems to be ever present, not only for current, but for future generations as well. And in Seaflower Biosphere Reserve, we are seeing that these small islands, as little as they are in green, here we have our mangroves. And these are areas with a huge sequestration capacity in just some centimeters in the ground. We can see if we don't preserve the mangroves here in the islands, there could be an increase of CO2 to the atmosphere of 97%. We need to change our relationship with the ocean, educating the little ones at schools, and all the way up to our scientists and decision makers, those that have the potential to make a difference. We have two challenges: the skills, knowledge, and technologies for all, developing integral capacities, having data and free access to information, transferring technologies. We have the big challenge now with the AI. Many of our children handle this better than we do. And we need to raise awareness, generate capabilities around all this. What we're doing here at the webinar is to try to reach to more people around these topics, not only for those that live at the shores. This is for everyone. The sea starts at the home. At home, we need to do a lot of things because our waste reaches the coastal areas. We need to think of the networks um, for communication and work. And for our region, in this case, for Latin America, we have cooperation available through UNESCO, through the IOD, the Information Center of UNESCO, the National Information Nodes. We have 17 regional centers. There are training courses in several languages: English, French, Mandarin, etc. And there are courses for Latin America, of course, in Spanish, and you can integrate your information if you are taking data. Data not only as from science, but as from the citizens' contribution on the territory. And this is how we can convey the information, how we can all be part of this, as from cartography, report on what is being done at the community level, blue carbon posters, what the communities are doing, showing through their social media, children working locally to music, to promote for others to receive all this information, those that are in the territory, using inclusive languages. We have a deaf community working with the ocean in sign. We don't not always use the sign language, and this is key. This needs to reach everyone. This is all I have to share. This is INVEMAR, our institute. We offer all of the courses presentially or virtually to all of you, and happy Mangroves Day to everyone once again. Thank you, Paula. It is very interesting to know what your center is doing and to provide further training to obtain more information. It's essential what you have said. This is relevant not only for those that live on the shores. This is a planetary mission, and it depends on the humanity as a whole. Thank you. I have shared through the chat the link to our academy, the Oceans Academy. And now we will hear from our colleagues, managers of the Montapés Manglares in Reserve in Peru. Henry Preciado and his colleague, if you can introduce yourselves, and then we hear you. Welcome, Henry. Hello, Christian. Hello, everyone. Thank you for this invitation. We want to greet all of you working on mangroves and ecosystems. We here have Professor Rubén Peña. He will introduce himself. Good morning, everyone. We're here to share some knowledge this morning with you. Sorry, they are cutting off. All right, Christian, you tell us when we are to do a presentation. I will turn off my camera because we're having internet problems. All right, so turn off your camera and we will let you know when we see your screen. All right. Thank you. Great, we see your screen. You can begin, Henry. Thank you. Great. All right, so we're here to tell you about our education experiences at our reserve, Amotapes Manglares, that are part of the restoration of mangroves as nature-based solutions in Latin America and the Caribbean. Here we are at Amotapes Manglares Reserve at the north of Peru, and we're going to tell you about of the environmental management activities that we did. This is a biosphere reserve. We have a technical team working on environmental education. And as you know, this project for restoring the mangroves that's called mangroves works with the support from the government of Flanders. And this project covers 7 biosphere reserves. One of those is the one I'm talking about at the northwest, Amotapes Manglares, located at the north of Peru. And this biosphere reserve covers almost all of the territory of the Tumbes and Piura regions, but it has a representative area considered as the core of the biosphere. As Paula Sierra indicated, the mangroves Pacific system, the very south, is here, as we see at the Tumbes region, part of our biosphere reserve. So now let's go into the reserve itself. The Tumbes mangrove system covers 8,000 hectares, approximately almost 3,000 are considered here in sector number 1. As we see in the map, it's the national sanctuary of Tumbes mangroves. This area is the core area, one of the core areas of this whole reserve, Amotapes Manglares. But what we're doing with the project is to have an intervention to the whole ecosystem, covering sectors 2, sectors 3. They are considered a preservation unit being intervened by the municipalities and districts. And what we're doing with them is having a more wholesome intervention of the whole sea shore area. Consider this whole area. And going more into the topic at hand, environmental education, we were able to have different actions related to education and environmental education at these different schools that we see around this ecosystem. We were able to identify these 10 schools you see in red, numbered from 1 to 5. They are located at Zarumilla province, the part of the biosphere territory, and from 6 to 10 are part of schools from the Tumbes province. This intervention, it has to do with exceptions, with covering primary and secondary school, fourth and fifth grade. El Bendito is inside the mangrove system, and we are including them. The professor will tell you what's being done with these schools, and this is oriented mainly with the beginning of an intervention. We'll try to raise awareness and intervene with education or about the environment, and then to work with local management units, as you see, to let them know about the initiative of the MANG-RES project in relation to mainly environmental education, also provide information about the objective of our project. Additionally to that, we have interacted with local stakeholders in these two provinces to come up with agreements and alliances to leverage and generate sustainability as regards education on these topics, alliances with technological institutes, pedagogical institutes as well, that have in their own curriculums and programs the topic of environmental education. Additionally to this, in relation to education, Dr. Ruben will tell you, but we are here to strengthen the teachers and headmasters' capabilities of each school covered. So we have these workshops and educational sessions with them so that they can develop their topics within their own classrooms. We also have school fairs and outages to fields with the professors so that the students see on the territory everything about this topic, co-living with nature, and in particular with the mangrove system, in particular those that are very close to the ecosystem. Additionally to that, intervention with local stakeholders to let everyone know about the project's initiative and to be able to hear their experiences and to learn about ancestral knowledge that will help out in this endeavor. The project has to do with nature-based solutions, actions directed to protect, manage, and restore sustainably natural modified ecosystems, facing the challenges of society in an adaptable, effective manner, provided simultaneously human well-being and benefits to the biodiversity. Here we have videos, but we cannot play them now. But with the use of biotechnology, we are able to promote hydrological resources recovery, and we can cover all these topics as regards the education and training, learning about the complexity of these resources and how we are to help preserve and promote the conservation of all these as from schools.
This has an environmental approach. So I will give the floor to my colleague so that he can explain what is being done in this regard. Thank you for inviting us to participate, and I would like to thank Engineer Henry for sharing this important information about the work that we've been doing in our sanctuary. We are very aware of the impact of protected areas. That is why we are very concerned about sustainability in time. That's why we work closely with students. Therefore, there have been several intervention processes, such as the agreements with institutions, the network in Tumbes, and the work that has been done with teachers, and of course with parents. But our purpose, considering the problem that we have, and since we have experienced these changes, the purpose is to raise awareness among young people on the environmental problems through knowledge, by inviting them to participate on research. We want these children to get involved, not only children, but also direct stakeholders. We want everyone to be involved in this problem. Therefore, we have to analyze the different services, and we have to understand that we are very friendly with nature, and we have to thank or be grateful for these spaces as the Incas were. That is why we have to preserve biodiversity. We are all familiar with the impact produced by solid waste. That is why we have to start to get to manage this problem, and this includes solid waste. We have to make children understand how waste has to be sorted and classified, including reducing, recycling, and reusing. Another important topic here in this process is that lifestyles are changing. Climate change is leading to a very different way of life. So we have to be prepared, and we have to try to see how we can counter and adapt to these changes. We have to be prepared, we have to be aware of what we are experiencing and of the effects we are suffering. Therefore, we have to teach students about environmental values. One is solidarity with planet, intergenerational equality, justice and solidarity, and respect to all forms of life. The first thing is related to solidarity, equality, and this includes citizenship actions by students and teachers. These are focused on their contexts where they hold or organize different events. They experience this adaptation to climate change, and they can experience this when they actually go to these places. Teachers have to provide solutions also related to the environmental reality, such as, for example, contamination, depletion of the ozone layer, environmental health, and they tell them that this is very harmful. Another important topic is justice and solidarity. In this case, students know what food is healthy and what they have to consume. Therefore, they have already selected their food. Talking about solid waste, we have to reapply the 3 Rs: reduce, reuse, and recycle. And we have to promote water saving. There is a high risk in water. We have to take care of hydrographic basins, and we have to foster a culture of water, a culture of conservation, not only conservation of water. Respect to all forms of life. Of course, we are human beings, and we have to respect each other. But how can we do this? For example, teachers develop actions in favor of fauna and flora, both national and locally. Teachers and students promote styles of life in harmony with the environment, revaluing local and ancestral knowledge. In the images, you can infer what we mean, and we have to promote the recovery and use of natural areas as educational spaces to appreciate what they offer. So in our context, I think that we have to appreciate all these things. And I think that through education, we will be able to generate a culture towards sustainability. This is what I wanted to explain. The methodological aspect will be explained at some other time. Excellent, Professor. Thank you. Due to time reasons, we have to stop now, and we hope that you can share more information sometime in the future about this reserve in Peru. Thank you, Henry and Professor Ruben, for all your comments. There are very interesting experiences. The first thing is the connection with territorial organizations that enable to connect communities, to include core topics, and to raise awareness about mangrove ecosystems, but also environmental education to bring all this experience and to be able to recover ancestral knowledge from native communities. On the 9th of August, there will be a session specifically to bring back all that knowledge and to include it in formal programs and in informal educational programs. Thank you very much, dear colleagues from this reserve in Peru. In order to continue with our panel, now I will give the floor to another colleague, Xiomara Enriquez. She's the manager of the Biosphere Reserve in El Salvador, and she will share some educational experiences in that Biosphere Reserve. Xiomara, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. For me, it's a great honor to share our experiences with you. Apart from that, I would like to thank UNESCO for including our reserve in our in this mangroves project. However, through different alliances that will be created and through the work of the ministry, we will be including other activities too. I have prepared something that is related to environmental education in the country. But before telling you what we do, I work for the Ministry of the Environment in the ecosystem management, and here I work as a technician in natural areas, and I'm responsible for managing these Jalisco reserves. It is in El Salvador. El Salvador is the smallest country in America. It's a territory of approximately 20,000 square kilometers and has approximately 300 kilometers of coastlines. Jalisco is important because it hosts 60% of the total forests in the country, salty forests. And as you know, most part of the mangroves of the dry Pacific coast in Central America. This is an ecosystem that was declared endangered in the year 2006. But it hosts mixed forests and evergreen forests. And these forests host very important species, such as a species of primates, and generally it hosts 37 endangered species and 58 threatened species. In this transition area, we have 2,464 hectares of transition forests. This is a segment that separates evergreen forests and the mangrove forests. There's a buffer zone of over 22,000 hectares and a core area of over 36,000 hectares. Jiquilisco is also one of the the largest areas in terms of population. The municipality of Jiquilisco is the second largest in this country, and by 2010, there were approximately 160,000 people in this region only. Next, I want to show you the map representing the conservation area, Sitio Ramsar. I would like to tell you that as regards mangroves, this is formed by 46 sectors that are naturally protected areas. And another important part is that this biosphere reserve is located between the two most important basins in the country. We do not have an environmental education program. However, we have awareness activities through our priority species programs. Last year, for example, a documentary was called In the Verge of Extinction. That documentary has 6 episodes. The first one is for cetaceans, for marine turtles, and for other species. And as a biosphere reserve territory, we participated in 5 out of these 6 episodes. The one that we are not present is as regards cougars. And next, I would like to share some material with you. Xiomara, we cannot see it. I think that you have to share the screen once you click on the link. Yes, sorry.
Xiomara, no lo escuchamos bien, pero quizás si puedes
Xiomara, we cannot hear. Perhaps you can share the link on the chat and participants will be able to watch it again.
Por favor.
Bueno, permítanme un segundo. Luego. ¿Se
No
ve
te
la presentación?
preocupes. Se ve la presentación.
Ok. Bueno, otra de las estrategias con la que
Another
estamos
strategy
en este año se lanzó
includes
nuestra
our
de educación ambiental
environmental education school
de los ambientes virtuales
through
para la
virtual
formación
environments. This is for training purposes. Currently, this school is formed
el de residuos sólidos, otro el de cambio climático,
by different topics, solid waste, climate change.
dirigido a recursos
There's a module related to hydric resources, biodiversity, and ecosystems, and a new module
y medio ambiente.
called sports and environment.
Uno de los programas de
But
conservación
each one of
nacional
the programs
parte de sus ejes transversales,
includes
concientización, interpretación,
awareness, interpretation, and environmental interpretation. In the case of cetaceans, we are implementing a sub-item or a sub-program
que se han desarrollado y diseñado
where we have developed games, cards, and there's another aspect related to the publication of scientific papers and technical notes.
del Programa Nacional de Conservación
In the case of the National Program of Preservation of Caimans and Crocodiles,
de nuestro programa de
environmental education includes research and monitoring of caimans and crocodiles. Basically, we conduct workshops both for staff and students, and we also work with students. And we are also organizing different activities about the importance of conservation and also strengthening some technical aspects. Because in Jiquilisco, in the last count, during a 24-kilometer tour, we were able to identify 120 crocodiles. So the purpose is to facilitate the interaction of this species that, in our case, we've had incidents where crocodiles invade homes or production areas, and the consequences haven't been good at all. But the main space for education and awareness is interaction and experience with communities. We organize different activities where we interact with universities, communities, farmers, for example, in terms of reforestation, restoration of mangroves. We have volunteer programs. There's also a small component of guided tours. We are working closely with solid waste management. We know that sometimes restoration is not only connected to reforestation, but for example, a reforestation seminar can help us get in touch with communities. 2 days ago, we had a reforestation day with a group of cooperatives that have had a history of offenses. So we were able to eradicate these poor habits. So today they are launching their campaigns and we join them. This is one of our main tools. But apart from these, we have new projections. For example, as a territory, we do not have a program regarding environmental education, but we are part of the mangroves project through different alliances. And we hope that by the end of the project, we have designed projects related on environmental education and awareness. This is all. Thank you very much. Greetings from Sisirihualtiche, the Bay of Stars, and this is part of the team. Thank you, Xiomara, for joining, and thank you for this interesting presentation. There's something really interesting that is related to the efforts of the reserves to raise awareness, to show that there are different ways of achieving more sustainable ways of life and what mangroves can do. You mentioned fishing and conservation of species. So thank you very much for sharing all that information. Xiomara, would you like to try to share your videos since you have finished your presentation to see whether we can hear the audio? Participants were saying that you just have to click share audio. Would you like to try it? Yeah, at least I would like to share one of the videos. These are 6 episodes. Meanwhile, I would like to invite participants. We have concluded the 3 presentations of today, so I would like to invite participants to ask questions. You can do it on this Q&A box. Go ahead, Xiomara.
Con respecto a mono araña, también bien
As
importante.
regards spider monkey, the problems are related to having these monkeys as pets in very closed spaces in poor conditions, in poor health conditions too. In order to have baby spider monkeys, they find female species, then they shoot to the mothers so that they die, and then they capture the babies and take them to the different markets and sell them. Generally, these monkeys have a very poor health, they are poorly nourished, they have parasites, they are stressed, and they are really afraid. They have been ill-treated. It is a long way of suffering because first, the impact and trauma of being separated from their mothers in such a violent way. Then they are transported to places where not necessarily they are fed appropriately. And those who survive are condemned to being in captivity for good, in a cage or enchained. So these monkeys, adult monkeys, cannot be reincorporated to nature. They have modified their behavior. They are very aggressive. And then people don't want to have them homes and they want to give them away to the Ministry of Environment. When we received one and when the monkey touched the floor, this caused a reaction because they had always lived on a floor and they were in very poor conditions. Right from the beginning, we have to understand that they are wildlife, that they are wild species. They are species that do not need assistance from human beings. When if we have them as pets, we cannot send them back to the wild.
tenemos una gama de leyes que
We
protegen
have different laws that protect wildlife. In this case, the animals are protected by the Constitution. A person that trades wildlife can be arrested.
porque es detenida la persona. La otra, pues, de que tiene que resarcir los daños.
And apart from that, they have to repair damages.
Muchísimas gracias, Xiomara, por compartir
Thank you,
ese.
Xiomara, for sharing this video. Would you, perhaps you can share a link later on for participants to watch other episodes. Yes, the 6 episodes are on YouTube, but I can share it on the chat. There's another documentary that includes protected areas and something related to the culture of the country. So you can find this other documentary called A Land in Volcanoes, Una Tierra entre Volcanes, and you can find some more information there, but I can share it on the chat. Thank you. And now we will look for the links and share it by email. And we will also make a note on our web at the UNESCO office in Santiago for you to see all the presentations and links.
Cierre del panel, veo que tenemos algunas
Now
preguntas.
to wrap up the panel, I see there are questions. There's a question from Claudia Gomez from Mexico saying that Mexico now with the new Mexican school, there's a new education program rethinking the way the education system works towards certain topics at school. A key element is favoring the link of school and community so that the teachers can talk about actual dynamics and issues with the community, acknowledging where the school is immersed and incorporating environmental education will be a mandatory school. These actions are core because education for sustainable development is an education that requires from students to experience what they learn, to live what they experience, to be able to study. So we are today talking about mangroves. There's a question. So Henry, please turn on your camera. Xiomara as well. The question is, are these projects related to the communities? If that is the case, have these communities received some sort of training or education? So Xiomara and Henry, please tell us. Well, as I was saying, in our case, the component that we will work the most from Mangres project is the strengthening of a management structure that is the Biosphere Managing Committee structure. It's a mechanism for action and governance. The social component needs to be together with the environmental component. We are going to work very hard on strengthening this space. There are spaces in Higlikove. It's very important to tell you that most of the communities here are under education and they have community participation. We need to strengthen them as regards environmental governance, for instance. Henry, are you there? Can you share your experience in the case of Amotapes Manglares Reserve? Henry? Yes, excuse me, Christian.
La pregunta, Henry, es eso.
There
Si
is echo.
tienen vinculación con las comunidades,
The question is if you're related to communities and if that implied training, education, what was done so far. Thank you. Actually, what we have been doing at the mangrove ecosystem, we have been implementing as 2004. We have quite a long path covered already, and we believe there is synergy, there is trust and knowledge with the local stakeholders around the mangroves ecosystem. We believe we have been able through this time to get closer with the local communities, but also to strengthen strategic alliances with stakeholders with specific topics. For instance, the world of academia for education, getting them involved has been quite a challenge, and now we have the support from the academy. So we can resort to them and to the different institutes for technical level education and training. So these alliances we work together with the national level of education, which had quite a role for setting up the alliances and opening up these possibilities for interacting with the different directors of the schools that we have been working with. This has taken quite some time, but we believe that today we have all these and we need to keep on updating all of the topics in relation to the management of these fragile ecosystems. Christian, it is important what Henry is saying, and when he looks back and says that we've been working with this for many years now, we work with high-level learning on environmental topics groups. That's how we call them. We have groups and organizations. We work together directly with stakeholders, providing school classrooms at night in relation to the relevance and the impacts of mangroves. So this has been something that we have done in direct contact with communities. We keep on doing this at all levels of schools in our areas. Thank you, Henry, and thank you, Ruben and Xiomara, for your answers. We have some time for one last question. Please tell us what have been the main challenges to raise awareness in communities? And there's a question about the role of companies or enterprises that have businesses, interaction or extraction activities like a consortium related to fishing, for instance, or similar cases, and how have been these experiences to promote environmental education? Xiomara, I believe that in our case, the most complicated aspect is to permeate towards our institutions of the state. Our curricula is still quite weak for environmental education. There are isolated initiatives. Nevertheless, projects like mangroves or projects funded by means of cooperation have fostered the opening up of different spaces, but we need to strengthen these spaces and following them up. As regards sustainability, this is complicated for us, but there are new spaces being opened up. For instance, with the aspect of virtuality, we have new opportunities for reaching sectors that couldn't be reached in the past. We have worked with the communities. Is there awareness? Yes, there is. But we need to consider in the case of mangroves that they they are their livelihood with different communities. In the case of Jaquilisco, we have people living from extracting turtles' eggs or parrots, little birds, or shellfish. So we need to go to them and try to strike a balance. First, to have a sense of belonging and identity, but we are not to cross the line of becoming prohibiting, because it is their livelihood. They have no other way of sustaining their lives but what they obtain from the microbes. Environmental education has to do with considering economic and social aspects of communities, because in our case, all of our natural areas are covered with communities. So there is a raising of awareness, yes, but we need to leave open their possibilities of livelihoods. And at some point, all of the institutions of the state that should have some kind of competence in this, to sit down and to foster common goals, not goals as from education, as from economy, or as from social aspects. This all goes together. Intersectoral work is a challenge we have seen with different projects of UNESCO. We see that there are contributions from different sectors. Conservation, education do not talk normally. So there are replicated efforts that we see, and there are failed efforts because they are not reaching those that are to be reached, the communities, the students, the teachers, and the education facilities, institutions. Thank you so much for making the difference, for discussing the communities which livelihood is related to the mangrove. So they need to keep the process with other activities that are risking the preservation of mangroves. Ruben and Henry, is there anything you would like to add? Yes. We agree with what Xiomara is saying. We accept that, but additionally to that, we have been strengthening the intervention of a consortium of organizations in this protected area, which is the Biosphere Reserve, Amotape Manglares. There are 6 regions, 6 directors, 6 technical teams. So every time there's a change in their structures, you need to do fine-tuning with everybody. That's a difficulty that we have, but we have found a protocol on how to tackle that. Additionally to that, the same happens with the change of government, the change of authorities, new managers, new directors, new characters turn up, and we need to come up with a campaign to have them aligned to all of the actions that have been done through a long time. And we believe that the private side, for instance, there's a private entity that works on biotechnology, and they are amazing in biology and their knowledge, but they lack being popular. So with that, we can supplement each other. We do not have the capacity of making the most of biotechnology. They can do that, and we supplement each other with the social knitting that we have, and we work with also the lobster company, and all that has to do with fishing, with top technology. They help us out with genetic assessment, metagenomic assessments, and all of the assessments that we do to avoid generating drastic impacts to the media. We supplement each other on the technical side, let's say, and on the community side with our actions. Thank you so much for this contribution, Henry. It's very important to understand that alliances are key for the subsistence of this type of project, as from the project Mangroves, for instance, with the production private sector, as from social responsibility, ecosystemic responsibility, environmental and responsibility, help provide capital for further opportunities for restoration and preservation. Thank you so much, Henry and Xiomara. Last question, a general one, so I will answer. How can we go more in depth with all this work that you are all doing as managers of these reserves with the teachers and professors? This project needs to generate materials for all of the teachers to teach at school and when they go out to the terrain as well, and to recover the ancestral knowledge to make them available in all these 7 countries participating, but also for all Latin America and the Caribbean within the possibilities that we may have of replicating this initiative. Now, wrapping up today's session, for the first time, the key role of the managers in the reserve systems to provide for the recovery and restoration of the flora and fauna. There are institutions like the Ocean Teachers Global Academy and UNESCO and other centers that are providing opportunities so that the teachers and other social stakeholders can access education and knowledge so that they can go more in depth in the way that they face this community education process to recover the mangrove systems. So having said this, you're all invited to the next webinar on August the 2nd for nature-based solutions and mangroves ecosystems. I want to thank you all for being here today with us, in particular those in the panel, Henry and Xiomara, big friends. It's been a pleasure to have you, to learn about the experiences you have in your reserves, to hear you about your recommendations and experience. Without any further ado, have a best rest of the day. Thank you so much. We're going to see you in the next webinar. Have a good day. Thank you, Christian and everyone. The same. It's a pleasure to meet you, Christian, and the whole team. A big hug from Xiomara. Greetings.